ago that everyone wants peace for Gaza, and yet by any metric, the Israelis are flouting the ceasefire that President Trump negotiated by killing an average of 2 children a day, not allowing the agreed-upon humanitarian aid into Gaza. How long can this continue? How long can the Israelis be allowed to show such disrespect to President Trump?
Well, look, that's your characterization of it about the term disrespect. What I would say is this. This was, first of all, it was a miracle that it happened in the first place. We all understand how difficult it was for that to come to the conclusion that it did, where the bombing and everything else, the scale and scope of what we saw ended, all the hostages were released, and we have relative peace right now for the most part, despite the things you're pointing to. That was very difficult. But this is not easy. Peace is a verb. It's an action. It's not a sentiment. Every single day will bring challenges.
What you just witnessed constitutes nothing less than the systematic annihilation of language itself, occurring in real time, and you need to understand the stakes because this is about the weaponization of euphemism in service of mass slaughter, while the American empire watches with its customary pathological detachment. Listen carefully to what the reporter confronted Marco Rubio with, because every single word matters when we're talking about whether children live or die, and the United Nations Children's Fund reports that 67 children have been killed during this so-called ceasefire, with 280 Palestinian deaths and 672 injuries reported since the pause began, which gives the lie immediate and total to Rubio's obscene claim that we have relative peace right now for the most part, when Israel has violated the United States-brokered Gaza ceasefire at least 497 times in 44 days, killing hundreds of Palestinians with 342 civilians killed in the attacks and children, women, and the elderly accounting for the majority of the victims. This is what passes for peace in the ideological framework of American imperialism, where the continued extermination of Palestinian children gets rebranded as diplomatic progress, and you're expected to nod along while Marco Rubio performs this grotesque act of linguistic violence by claiming that peace is a verb, as though the active ongoing massacre of 2 children per day represents some kind of aspirational journey we're all taking together toward understanding. Here comes the first bombshell, and I need you to really absorb this, because the magnitude of the deception is staggering in its audacity. When Rubio responds to the reporter's blunt assessment that Israel is flouting the ceasefire and killing an average of 2 children a day by dismissing it as your characterization, rather than addressing the documented empirical reality that, since the ceasefire was announced on October 11th, Israel has reportedly committed at least 393 violations, killing 339 Palestinians, including more than 70 children, and injuring over 871 others. And this rhetorical maneuver of treating genocide as a matter of perspective represents the exact moral bankruptcy that enables systematic war crimes to continue with American weapons and American diplomatic cover. The reporter asks with devastating clarity how long the Israelis can be allowed to show such disrespect to President Trump, which is itself a fascinating rhetorical choice that speaks to the only language this administration might possibly understand, since they clearly cannot be moved by appeals to international humanitarian law or basic human decency. But even this appeal to Trump's ego gets deflected by Rubio into meaningless platitudes about how difficult peace is and how every single day will bring challenges, as though the systematic violation of a ceasefire agreement through the murder of children represents some kind of unavoidable growing pain in the peace process, rather than a deliberate strategy of maintaining dominance through violence. And wait, because the second bombshell drops even harder when you understand what's actually happening on the ground beneath all this diplomatic doublespeak. Israel violated the ceasefire agreement at least 738 times from October 10th to December 12th, through the continuation of attacks by air artillery and direct shootings, with Israel shooting at civilians 205 times, raiding residential areas beyond the Yellow Line, 37 times bombing and shelling Gaza, 358 times, and demolishing people's properties on 138 occasions.